like
have an
never
issue.
like if you're not a Christian, Kyle, and you're Christian kind of alcove there in Georgia, no one ever is going to come to you and say you have to pay a different rate of taxes.
Yeah,
you have to go to different stores. You have to.
The religious law will not be enforced as a law. I'm not going to lose any hands if I can. The Bible has many restrictions that it places on Christians, and I ignore all of them virtually. But I know there's no religious police to come and kick my door in and drag me away and torture me and threaten my family and
well, and it's not, it's also there's other cataclysms that are that exist on in the conceptual realm as well. So, the states dominated by Islam are not economically productive, and that's quite an interesting mystery. And
they're not.
And many of the Islamic states that we purport to regard as allies hold values that are antithetical to our system. And Saudi Arabia is a classic example of that. And I cannot, for the life of me, understand, except in a psychoanalytic manner, why the radical feminists tolerate America's ally, the fact that America is allied with the Saudis. It's just it's not much different as far as I'm concerned than it would be if black people didn't say anything if America was allied with a black slave-owning state, which of course also happens in Saudi Arabia, by the way, and not so in
the feminists. It's got to be because Muslims right now are higher up on the victim hierarchy than them. So even if it's way over there, they're not allowed to speak out against.
I think it's their unconscious wish for brutal male domination.
I don't think so.
Man.
I like that. That's fun.
I think it's the left's ability to apologize for anything that's wrong. I think the people on the left, maybe I'm just as crazy as you guys are. The Muslims oppress women. Oh, that's cultural. We need to understand that. Oh, guys think they're girls. That's, hey, we need to understand where they're coming from. Everything, they're so open-minded to everything.
Like excuse making.
Even if it's horrific.
Well, that's also the agreeableness, that we were talking about earlier. Yeah, because agreeable people agree. That's why the term exists. And so there is a real apology. And if you ally that with high openness, which is that open-mindedness, that's associated with creativity, you get agreeable openness. And that's definitely.
And then anything goes when you're agreeable and open. I'll call you Zer and I'll forgive you beating your wife. And
if you're low in conscientiousness, anything really goes then.
Bill Maher puts it nicely when he says, the left would not for 1 second be okay with apartheid in South Africa, right? They were just banging that drum, hating it every second of the way. But for some reason, the oppression of women in Saudi Arabia has gotten a complete pass.
Yep.
And it's a real deal, Saudi
Arabia.
It's
the real deal, yeah.
Heck, just the driving thing alone.
What do
Taylor, can you hold that?
They like her. Yeah.
You broke up.
You broke up. We couldn't hear what you were saying. You're still a little frozen. So, but yeah, just taking away their ability to drive, right? Women don't have mobility without men. That is hugely oppressive. If you made that change in America and none other, then women would be stuck at home.
You actually don't see a more concrete embodiment of the idea of individual autonomy than the automobile. I think maybe it was the Soviet Union's import and then manufacture of the automobile that doomed communism, because nothing screams autonomous individual like a car, right? You drive it yourself. You can go on any road. No one tells you what to do. It's freedom. And the fact that women can't drive in Saudi Arabia tells the entire story. And so the fact, I cannot understand for the life of me why we are so blind in the West that we make the assumption that those people are our allies. It's like, in what way?
Just the other day here in the U.S. in St. Louis, I was driving down the street and I saw 3 Muslim women in full burqas. This is a week ago. We're in the middle of a huge heat wave. It's like 105 degrees and humid as can be. And it's like, what the hell? Like that. someone at home told them, you can't leave unless you put this on. They did not look in the and on this wonderful, hot, muggy Missouri day. Black polyester won't be horribly uncomfortable. Like, if it was just about covering up, why can't it be made of linen or cotton or something comfortable? Because it's not about that. It's about controlling people and oppressing them. Like, and to see people making excuses constantly about it, say, oh yeah, the linen,
all the burgers shrink and they're really tight all of a sudden.
It's a weird thing to see when these people who are very progressive in every walk of life other than that, then they see that, and because they're in the wrong place on the hierarchy, they have to do weird excuse making instead of just going, yeah, that is oppressive. When you make someone wear a garbage bag in the Midwest in summer, you're kind of being an asshole. This
may be a completely foolish question, but so the women can't drive automobiles. That's been made clear to me. Could they ride a camel or a horse? Like that's, I'm not even like teasing. Like can they hop on a camel and go? Because I heard one of the Saudi princes the other day. That was part of how he made his argument. He was like, look, we should allow our women to drive. Our grandfathers allowed their wives to lead the camels. And I was
I think part of it is that the women shouldn't be out of the supervision and protection of a kin male.
I think that is the case. And so driving won't get the problem solved necessarily.
No. And it's a hangover from the time when, well, the time still exists in many countries where an unaccompanied woman is fair game. Yeah. I mean, you saw that happening in Europe with those mass sexual assaults that were absolutely unbelievably scandalous.
That is a mindset that is very common in the minds of young Middle Eastern men. I had a friend from Morocco, which is, it's certainly not a war-torn region. It's a very nice country, but he was Muslim, and he told me, he was like, oh yeah, in Morocco, you see a pretty girl, you just grab her breast, and you'd like, and she can't tell anybody, because you can be like, I'll tell your brother that you came on to me. And I'm just like, whoa, fuck, bro. Like this sounds horrible. He's like, no, they like it. And I'm just like, oh, yeah. Jesus Christ, to me, you are a sexual predator at 5'2".
That sounds like a hell of a thing for radical leftists to apologize for.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of discussion to be had about issues of that sort. And so and they're very, very difficult discussions.
There's something
because
go on.
Well, sorry.
I was going to say there's something complicated about our relationship with Saudi Arabia, right? Like apparently Saudi Arabia and Iran have been mortal enemies since from the beginning of time, and now they've been having proxy wars since the get-go, right? When Iran was at war with Iraq back in the 80s, Iraq was fueled by Saudi Arabia, and they just had that proxy war. Now in Syria and previously in Kuwait, these were all Saudi Arabia and Iranian proxy wars. I just learned about this recently. Hope it's right. And the U.S. has been on the side of Saudi Arabia from the beginning, and we view Iran as this big, problem that needs to be solved. And objectively, I don't really see why Iran is better or worse than Saudi Arabia. I don't know, 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. But they're our teammate now. And if we don't have one of them being a teammate, we probably have big energy problems for now.
Well, those are the sort of energy problems that we should probably have sooner rather than later, in my estimation. And things have switched around a lot. I mean, America is now an oil exporting country again. And you guys have been doing pretty good on the fracking for natural gas front. Mm-hmm. And, the other thing that's quite a bit worth considering is that if the West wanted to reduce its reliance on Middle Eastern oil, it could turn to Alberta and the tar sands. There's enough bloody oil there for the rest of humanity, for the rest of time, and it's a bit messy, but it isn't obvious to me that it's worse than dumping $1 trillion every 5 or 6 years into the coffers of the Saudi princes, especially given their obvious responsibility for distributing the most vicious Wahhabist propaganda all over the world, which is something that a fair chunk of that petro money goes to.
And the rate at which renewable resources are improving, solar, wind, etc., makes it a viable contender to bet on as well.
Yeah, well, go Elon Musk. That's my theory, my idea, or my opinion. It's hardly my idea. Mm-hmm. He's working hard on the battery solution and on electric cars, and it seems to me that I could foresee a future where oil isn't worth a damn thing in 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that very well could happen. It would be great for us. We'd no longer be beholden to Middle Eastern, what are many of them, basically war chieftains who take this huge amount of money and then have state-sponsored terrorism like Iran does, and just hand it over to ISIS, hand it over to Al Qaeda, Boko Haram, whoever. Like, yeah, we do need oil, but think about what we're not just feeding a prince's pool, like Scrooge McDuck pool full of gold, like we imagine, you know, and his 10 gold Bugattis. Like, people die because of that money.
Yep. Yeah. Well, Canada's been very bad in that regard too. We just sold a whole boatload of weapons to the Saudis.
We did too.
Yeah.
They needed them.
Yeah. Yeah.
To bomb us with.
Right? It's like if your friend's like, hey man, I really want to borrow a handgun. And you're like, oh, okay, sure. You need to keep yourself safe, huh? You're like, yeah, it's scary over there at night alone. But when Saudi Arabia is like, we need 50 tanks and 38 attack helicopters, and we want the big missiles. What do y'all call it? Hellfire? Yeah, those. We're gonna need a lot of those. Trust me. It's like, what are you doing with them? what are you doing with all that over there, Saudi Arabia? Do we even ask?
They're bombing Yemen.
If someone comes over here and wants to borrow one of my weapons, what are you gonna do with it?
Yeah, shoot anything cool?
I want to know where you're headed with my assault rifle. Like, going to shoot some targets? Yeah, I guess you could call them targets. All right, then. You will not be getting a gun today.
Yeah, I'm looking at you sitting there. None to spare, really.